So, welcome to everyone that has just joined and those who are watching this recording back on a later date. Today's session is all about working with ambassadors and influencers. It's about how you can work with trusted individuals to raise awareness of your organization and add depth to your campaigns. So, there's a lot to learn. Let's begin by looking at the agenda for the session. So, first, we'll cover the learning outcomes, then get straight into it with the differences between what we mean by an influencer and ambassador. We will also explore the benefits it can bring to your digital advocacy. We'll share some top tips for working with ambassadors, where we'll talk about how the best ambassadors have actually been hiding right under your nose. Here we'll explore how your colleagues can get involved and become your organization's biggest champions. Then we'll move on to influencers, how you can engage them and start work with them. Then we'll have a breakout room discussion where you could talk about how you can introduce this method of working to your organization. And then at the end, as always, we'll have time to share reflections, any questions, and run through our next steps. So I hope that sounds good. And I'll start it off with some introductions, starting with me. So, hi, my name is Simran. I'm a digital communications coach in the Lightful team, where I'm here to support you on your bridge journey. I have 4 years of experience of working on social media within the nonprofit sector, where I've managed both large and small campaigns and built strong and engaged digital communities. Naturally, with my line of work comes working with influencers and ambassadors, where I've had to go through the whole process of researching and reaching out, but also the fun part of working with them on all kinds of formats, such as the Young Ambassador Program, creating storytelling content with passionate and popular influencers, as well as micro influencers in awareness campaigns. And I've seen firsthand the benefit that this has in increasing the reach and awareness of an organization. So I'm really excited to be able to talk about this with you today. And I'm also joined by my lovely colleague Jasmine, so I'll hand over to her now.
Thanks, Imran. Hi, everyone. Lovely to see you all again. I think I've spoken to all of you on the call today. My name is Jasmine. I'm digital training lead on the Bridge team here at Lightful. And similar to Simran, my background's in digital marketing, and I've worked a lot in social media and worked with influencers and ambassadors in quite different roles and capacities in my previous jobs. Some of them were very high budget influencers, worked through an agency in kind of advertising for a finance company, and some were more organic ambassadors that we approached through social media to help raise awareness about particular campaigns and advocacy work that I did at a nonprofit I worked at. So yeah, really looking forward to getting into this topic with you all today and hopefully sparking some fun ideas for your upcoming campaigns and work in 2025. Looking at our learning outcomes for today, by the end of the workshop, hopefully you'll all understand the benefits of working with influencers and ambassadors. You'll also know how to discover and engage with both influencers and ambassadors, and then be able to identify any opportunities where collaborating with other people externally can help you engage your target audiences better. That might be for a particular campaign that you're running. It might be to help raise awareness about the work that you're doing, or you might have identified a particular audience group that you'd like help engaging. And so maybe this will be something to help you with that. And I know we've already said it lots of times, but we're going to say the words influencers and ambassadors a lot of times throughout today's session. So just give some quick definitions to begin with. But influencers and ambassadors are very similar in that it's about engaging somebody in sharing your message, whatever that may be, with their audience. So social media influencers are people who've built a really solid reputation online, a fairly substantial following, and they might have built their reputation due to their knowledge on a particular topic, or even for their personality or their creativity. And essentially they create high quality content for their social media channels and have really engaged followers. And on their own digital channels, on their social media channels, they build up these followings of dedicated, enthusiastic fans who really pay attention to everything that they share, including any products they might mention or any trends that they're a part of. Influencers are also able to create trends. I think we see that more than ever when we've got TikTok and things where people are creating videos all over our feeds, but they can encourage followers to buy products. I know I often buy things that are recommended to me by an influencer, but most importantly in the nonprofit world, they can be promoting a cause an advocacy message, or prompt people to participate in a fundraising campaign as well. And as we'll see in a moment, they don't actually need to have millions of followers to be an influencer. It might be that they actually have a significant influence within a particularly niche audience, which isn't necessarily very big. I imagine when we talk about influencers, you're instantly thinking of those kind of huge TikTok stars, the celebrities, millions of followers, going viral with their videos. And that might be appropriate, as we'll come on to, but that isn't really all that we're looking at today, as you'll see later on. Now, ambassadors are different to influencers in that they're most likely to be existing supporters, volunteers, or employees of your organisation or connected to your cause in some way. So they might already have a long-term relationship with your organisation and then be happy to commit to sharing content and engaging with you. And this might be online and offline. It's not restricted to social media, but it can certainly include those online channels. So they might agree to be a spokesperson to advocate for your cause within their community, or they might help you to amplify your message by using their own digital channels and networks to share some key messaging of yours. So that's a little bit about influencers and ambassadors and what we mean by them. If you have any questions as we go through, do always feel free to pop that in the chat. But I'm sure by the end of the session, you'll have heard the words influencers and ambassadors enough. But we're just going to check in with you with a couple of poll questions which have come up on your screen. The first is asking if you have worked with social media influencers or high profile figures before. And then secondly, how confident do you feel about this idea of working with them? If you have worked with them before, please do pop us a message in the chat and let us know whether that was on a campaign, if it's something that's ongoing, you're still doing. It'll be really great to hear. And there'll be an opportunity later to have some ideation within groups. And so it'll be really helpful to hear from you if that's something you've done before as well, as we look to inspire each other in the collaborative space of having a workshop. So I can see most of you have voted. The confidence is much on the lower end of the scale, which is absolutely fine. That's why we're all here today. Most of you haven't worked with influencers before, but a couple of you have. So please do put those messages in the chat and let us know what your work with them looked like. Was it successful as well? Is it something that you would do again? Or maybe it's something that's ongoing. So yeah, do let us know. And then we're going to move on to talk about working with ambassadors. So ambassadors are a really good way for organisations to raise their profile, engage their audience. They're usually people who have kind of high profile within the media or within their local community, and they can act as a spokesperson for your organisation. So they're connected with you in some way, and they have a sphere of influence which they can use to help your organisation. Now, ambassadors can represent you in a formal way, or you might want to engage with them from time to time, depending on your campaigns and your priorities. So it's really up to you to decide how you want to work with them. But it is important to make that clear from the beginning of the relationship. So if you'd like to start working with ambassadors, a good place to start is to think about how you could best use ambassadors or what your organisation needs. So maybe thinking ahead to this year, it's a really good time to look at the year ahead. Do you have a key campaign coming up? Is there a particular issue you're campaigning on that you really need help to raise awareness about? And is there like a fundraising moment? Maybe there's an awareness day. Perhaps your organisation has an anniversary to celebrate. And then think about whether you want that relationship to be more long-term and what it is you want from that ambassador. What actions do you want them to take? For example, the relationship with your ambassador could span 6 months or a year, and you might have a couple of key moments when you really want them to represent your organisation in a certain way. And that's a bit different to how you will probably work with influencers, because their engagement tends to be contracted by a campaign period. But ambassadorship has the potential for more longevity. At the charity I used to work at, we had a set of ambassadors who all kind of were high profile amongst different audience groups, and they would be long-term ambassadors. So we would kind of keep them as warm contacts, we'd engage with them regularly, and then they would help to support particular campaigns that were relevant to their audiences. But how ambassadors represent your organisation is totally up to you. So what's really helpful, I think, is just having an initial conversation with some potential ambassadors, just to discuss what that could look like and define the parameters of that relationship together. So you could have your ambassador asking people in their networks, both online and offline, to support your organisation. So they might be able to offer a fundraising ask during your campaigns and appeals. And it might be that when you've got a particular campaign period, they're really going to help amplify that by sharing your social media content, perhaps emailing some of their contacts with the information about it, and just really helping to further that reach, but also build trust and build the reputation of your organisation across the people that they talk to. Or maybe you need help raising awareness about an issue. So you might be working with really specific communities and opening up conversations on particular issues. And I know that will look different for all of the organisations represented here. But if there's a particular issue or message that you want to communicate to a broader audience, perhaps it's in the realms of advocacy or education, or to specifically reach people who aren't yet following you online, then working with an ambassador who's kind of got some prominence in that community can be a great way to get the message out. Or perhaps you'd like to work with ambassadors to reach specific groups. So, for example, young ambassadors who engage with their networks through schools, universities, or at events. So an important place to start is setting goals for how you can best work with ambassadors. And then you can begin finding ambassadors who are the right fit to help you deliver these goals. So there might be people already in your network. It might be a case of mobilizing members of your board, for example. I know lots of organizations do that, and with some good success as well. Or it might be individuals who you need to reach out to, or even recruit like you might do with volunteers. But perhaps if it's you might have some long-term donors who have given to you over a number of years, are really committed to your organisation, really engaged. And those are the sorts of people that could be great candidates to be an ambassador as well, because they care about your cause. They've donated themselves. And so it's a really great person to be able to represent you to their friends, family, contacts, and connections as well. Now I'm going to pull up a roadmap on the screen to look at how you can approach activating ambassadors. Just to think about where you begin in that whole journey of working with external people. Firstly, you want to find your ambassadors. So that research stage is really key. We want to make sure that those potential ambassadors have shared values and also a network that they can activate. So ideally, they will be passionate about the work that you do. And that authenticity is really important. So identify stakeholders who really love what you do, or are influential in your cause or area. And you'll know that through if you've got an existing relationship with them already. And so ideally, they should be already aware of your work. They should follow you online, as that will mean that they're a good fit. But then also have values that align to your values and have some kind of influence among an audience that aligns with yours. So they really need to be skilled at building relationships. So choose someone who can connect with new people in those appropriate channels, whether that's online or offline. Always good to check as well about ethics, their reputation, making sure they haven't been involved in any controversy before. So just checking their social handles, doing some Google searches, just make sure that you can only kind of embark on partnerships with people that really do align with your values. And then once you've identified some people who could be ambassadors, and I say people, that could be, you might initially think, oh, this is one great person we'd love to have on board, or there might be a few. I wouldn't have loads to start with because it's kind of, you want to have that relationship with them. But once you've picked some potential people, then you can invite them. So drop them a message, you can introduce yourself and your organisation, and let them know why you think they're a good fit to work with you. And if they've already shared your content before, or they might have fundraised on your behalf, then, you know, really acknowledge that and kind of let them know the impact that that's had, and that you kind of want to do this more and further that impact. You could mention that you share an audience. You might be able to demonstrate that their audience is likely to be really interested in your work, and kind of explain why and what that will mean for both parties, so for them as well as for your organisation. And then see if they have any questions. You can arrange to meet and just discuss that more and just get an understanding of expectations. So you can understand how they'd like to support your organisation, and then we can talk about sharing an ambassador toolkit with them, which I'll talk about in a moment. So if they say yes, they're on board, you kind of establish what that's going to look like. Then you want to support and communicate with them. So share some resources that they could use to help spread the word about your organisation. So it'll be really important to supply ambassadors with the resources that they need to help share your campaigns or whatever it is. You don't want to kind of just say, great, you're signed up, and then expect them to kind of do all the heavy lifting and create content themselves. If you share some sample text to use on their social media channels, you could share some branded images. You might even want to announce on your channels, this person is joining us as an ambassador. So think about how to make it as easy as possible for them, especially, picture them, I suppose, as a volunteer, like they're doing this with their own time and resources. And then it's about kind of activating, so building on that relationship. Maybe you've had first week or so where they can digest that content that you sent, but then you might want to prompt them to say, could you go ahead and share a post, or maybe they'll post and you can reshare their content. Whenever they tag you in content, make sure that you're commenting, engaging, and share their success stories in your supporter communications as well, and internally at your organization. And then finally, to celebrate and thank them, really make sure they know that they're valued, and then you can keep that relationship going. You can be open about kind of how long you want that to last on both sides of that relationship. But I think it's just really helpful to make sure that they do know the impact that they're having, because often people don't. And that's where I think, I'm working with organisations over the last few years, I've really seen a lot more opportunities for people to work with, I guess, more ordinary people who might be their supporters, staff, board members, because they do have a lot of influence in their kind of circles of friends, family, network, and a presence on social media. So it got a lot of potential, I think, with these relationships. And in that, I mentioned toolkits. And it's really important to make sure, like I said, that people have all the information they need to be able to support your organisation. So you can create a toolkit, create some resources to share with them. This can be a really simple document that just outlines, your organisation, your mission statement, your campaign, and some kind of messaging that people can copy and paste. So make it really easy for them. It can just be a simple Word document, Google document. There might be 1 or 2 pages that lists out who we are, what we do. So they've kind of got that at their fingertips. If they're asked, if they're representing you at an event, or if they want to post about you on social media, they can just refer to that and have all the info that they need. And it's something that a lot of organisations going through the Bridge programme find really useful, as we see them engaging people to help with fundraising or awareness campaigns by following this model. And it's also something I've seen people use in fundraising campaigns where perhaps they've got some major donors and they think, let's mobilize them to share this campaign with their network, rather than asking them to give again if they've already given financially. So that can take a few different forms, and we'll look at a couple of examples here. So this one is from Project In Kind. And this is something this is their ambassador toolkit, and they've outlined the benefits of being an ambassador. They've provided a really clear bank of resources, and then ways to get involved and spread the word. And actually notice on that second page, even just having their social media handles and a few basic tips. And they've got a hashtag in there as well. So they're saying, remember to tag us, use the hashtag, making it really easy for people to create some really effective content. And this toolkit specifically was aimed at young ambassadors. So it's been created with lots of fun illustrations and details, and really relevant to their audiences. One of the benefits they've arranged is for their young ambassadors to qualify for class credit at participating schools. And I think that sounds similar to something I remember speaking to some people on the call here about as well. So that's something about really tailoring that offering to that audience they want to target. And another great example is from the Association of European Cancer Leagues, who created another ambassador toolkit for engaging in some awareness campaigns. So you can see they've kind of outlined all that information. Everything's there in one place for people to use. And Sabina's posted some links to those if you'd like to look at those for some inspiration, as well as Lightfall's ambassador toolkit as well, then please do go ahead and have a look at those. So as well as having those formal ambassadors that might be external to you, there's also an opportunity to engage your internal staff and employees. And so I'm going to hand over to Simran to talk to us more about what that could look like.
Thank you, Jasmine. Yeah, so before we move on to talking about influencers, I want to talk about how not all ambassador outreach has to be external to your organization, but can already exist within it through your employees and colleagues. So if you're on LinkedIn, you've probably come across an employee from an organization who's built a strong presence and a kind of personal brand. They've got a great bio, have regular posts, and share their daily work or are joining in on relevant conversations. For nonprofits, this is a free and powerful way to amplify your mission and engage with your audience. Your employees and colleagues are some of your most trusted and authentic voices. They experience the day-to-day impact of your organization's work, and their stories can resonate with audiences in a way that feels personal and genuine. So, what can they actually do? It starts with simple things like sharing their personal stories about their work or the impact that they've seen can go a really long way. Imagine a fundraising post on LinkedIn about the joy of seeing a donor's contribution making a real difference, or a program manager sharing a photo from a recent community event. They can also engage with the organization by liking, commenting, or sharing their thoughts on current affairs that tie in closely with your mission. This boosts your visibility to their networks. Now, how do you get them involved? Start by making it easy for them. Just as Jasmine spoke about before, you can provide a toolkit with things like pre-written captions, hashtags, or photos, so they don't have to start from scratch. You can also offer simple trainings on platforms like LinkedIn. A quick lunch and learn session can boost their confidence and help them understand the impact of the advocacy. Most importantly, recognize their efforts. Share their posts in team meetings or newsletters. Inspire others to join in by celebrating those who are stepping up. This helps create a culture of advocacy. And the benefits? This includes amplifying your message organically without ad spend, whilst also building a sense of community and shared purpose amongst your staff. When people are able to see the work you are doing behind the scenes, this adds credibility, in turn attracting potential donors and partners. So I want you to think of your team as a built-in group of passionate ambassadors. By equipping and encouraging them, you're not just boosting your online presence, you're building a stronger, more connected community around your cause. And now we'll move on to the big word, influencers. So I know working with influencers can be a little daunting because it can be tricky to know where to start and how you could grow your relationships online. But it's important to remember that you don't need to be a big organization to build partnerships with big names, but also that influencers come in many forms and who also have their own passions. So there will likely be lots of people from mega influencers to nano influencers who'll be interested in supporting your organization. So let's take a look at how this can go and how you could take the first steps. When we think of influencers, we usually think of very famous people with millions of followers and wonder how on earth we will get them on board. And some of you may be able to, in which case, that's brilliant. But the power that small nano micro influencers hold, because smaller influencers often have really engaged followers and may even benefit your organization more, as bigger influencers are often considered less trustworthy as the audience knows that lots of brands pay them to give biased opinions. Smaller influencers can be seen as more approachable and more reliable because they don't fall into this trap and so have more of an influence over their audiences. So as you see with the graph on the screen, although mega influencers have over 1 million followers, their followers may be less likely to take action when compared to hundreds of followers a nano influencer might have. As nonprofits, your target audience is often niche, as you're looking for people that care about a particular cause that they will take action for. In this case, nano influencers can be a huge asset when it comes to reaching those people who are committed enough to be following online conversations and channels about it. And actually, it would be interesting to think about the people that you trust and are influenced by online. Is it an influencer or a celebrity, or is it those people that are more local to your area and are part of your community? There are lots of benefits that come working with influencers, some very obvious and some less so. First, it increases the reach and awareness of your organization as you're put in front of their thousands or millions of audience members. This can lead to increased engagement on the content they have shared. Or if you have set up an easy user journey on your social media profiles, this might lead to a spike in website traffic or newsletter signups that you can then leverage for donations. As I touched on before, influencer marketing can also help you tap into specific audiences because influencers have very specific followings. For example, if you target an influencer that shares content around sustainable fashion, their following will also be interested in sustainable fashion. Next, having other accounts share your message and amplify your mission also helps build trust between you and your audience. Moreover, the fact that others are getting involved in sharing on your behalf, and it's not just your organization posting about its own mission, is another way that working with an influencer can help build trust. Lastly, collaborating with influencers who align with your target audience can bring fresh insights and creatives to help you connect more effectively. Remember that influencers have built their platforms on understanding their audience and creating relatable or impactful content that truly resonates. For instance, this may come with new insights on tone and language around call to actions or campaign messages. So let's talk through a process of how you can find the right influencer and engage them. Step 1 is identifying the right influencer. This is the foundation of your strategy and probably the most time-consuming because it requires careful research. It starts with focusing on the platforms where your audience spends the most time. Instagram is a common hub for influencers, but TikTok and YouTube are also very important options to consider. But if you're looking for a more professional one, LinkedIn is also an option. Once you have chosen your platform, explore your audience's followers to see which influencers they engage with. There are also tools to help you with this, such as SparkToro, Moonio, and StoryClash. The links for this will also be shared in the chat. These are helpful because they also allow you to analyze the engagement rates of the influencers, which helps you calculate their connections to your target audience, something you won't get from just looking at their follower account, sorry. After you've got your list of potential influencers, you need to check that they are the right fit for your organization. This is where you get to conduct a background check, a little bit of 007, for the sake of your organization's reputation. Ask yourself, what are their values and do they align with yours? Have they ever been involved in any controversy? Search their name or username in Google's news section to see if there are any headlines about them that you wouldn't want to be associated with. Remember, this research phase is important for building a trusted partnership. Step 2. Now it's time to reach out to your chosen influencers with a personalized message that grabs their attention. Here you can either reach out to them directly on the channel you have chosen, or they sometimes have an email address at the top of their page, which often has a higher response rate than a DM. Then you can write your message, which could look something like the next slide. Start with saying hello and explaining your organization briefly, saying that you're reaching out because you have similar values, or you see that they campaign on issues that are relevant to your audience group. Don't be shy with being straightforward and putting forward the option of collaborating and ask if they'd be interested in taking this further. What helps the most is by making the initial ask simple. Start small to build trust and rapport. This commonly comes in the form of asking the influencer to share a specific post from your page. Not only does it amplify your message to the audience straight away, but also requires minimal effort from the influencer, increasing the likelihood of a positive response, which could then be developed further. Step 3. If you're seeking a bigger commitment, such as involvement in a campaign, make sure you be transparent. Make the answers to the following questions clear. Will they be volunteering or is compensation involved? Are you providing materials or will they create content? If you are commissioning content, inquire about their rates up front. Have you both decided and confirmed a deadline along with any content guidelines you want them to follow? Most of all, don't be disheartened if you don't get a response from everyone. That's why it's good to cast a wide net, because you only need one or two to engage to have a really big impact. I'm now going to hand it over to Jasmine, who will be going over some case studies.
Great, thanks, Simran. And yeah, definitely echo the point of doing that background research as well. I've definitely seen some unfortunate collaborations with influencers, which would have been avoided if they'd just done that easy research. So yeah, just having a look at a couple of examples. At the top here, we've got an example from the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. They worked with 30 micro-influencers. So those are those smaller social media influencers to promote an event that they were holding to bring communities together and to fundraise. So these influencers posted videos, they shared photos with their audiences to bring them together and raise awareness of the campaign. So think about those influencers, they all had to be fairly specific to the community they were working in, but also to kind of people who were interested in this work that the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society do as well. And so by mobilising those influencers, this content then reached over 240,000 Instagram users, which was far more than a society would have been able to reach by themselves and through their own social media content. And even if they'd used, paid advertising, it's nothing quite the same as having that personal recommendation from someone that you follow and trust. And so this really helped them to reach new people who wouldn't otherwise have heard about this campaign. The second one, actually, I think that's probably a more recent example, but this was from a few years ago, a collaboration from a few organisations to help mobilise younger voters in the US. This was with a previous election, so we've got a bit of data on it. And it was a huge campaign. They worked with some really big influencers, loads of budget. They essentially engaged with 300 young creators and asked them to get young people to register to vote. And that is huge. And that is just, I suppose, to show the scale of some of the influencer work that can be small or it can be big, depending on the aims and the audience. But the really important part I wanted to pull out here was what they did with those young creators was they just said, we want you to get young people to register to vote. They didn't tell them how to do it. And that was really a part of, they knew that these people know their own audiences. That's why they've become so successful. That's why they're influencers. They have that real skill of creating content that engages their specific target audiences. And so they might be reaching audiences that you don't currently engage with, and so you don't know how to reach them. So giving them that creative freedom, I thought, was a really interesting approach. And it was really successful. It reached 13 million people across Instagram and TikTok, which was absolutely huge. And we've seen other similar campaigns since, particularly last year in the year of many elections across the globe. But I think that was a really interesting approach of just giving them that brief and letting them go with that. And I think the thing they'd have had to do up front was make sure they really had that trusted relationship with those influencers to give them that creative freedom. But just some inspiration from the scale of micro influencers to macro influencers to get you thinking about what that can look like. And a few top tips as well. So we held a guest session last year with influencer Eldina Jaganjack and then also with influencer Kate Hall. And these guest sessions were with their jobs were to work as influencers. So they shared some top tips with us, which we thought we could pass on as well. The first one was to set your objectives. So before you think about kind of who you want to reach out to, who you want to partner with, think about what you want to achieve. So is it a short-term partnership to increase traffic to your website, or do you want to build a long-term partnership to increase your fundraising? So think about your goals, of course, make them smart so that you can measure your success. Then do your research. We've probably said that a few times, but don't just pick anyone. You need to be strategic and pick those that align with your values, who are truly passionate about your cause, and then to be really clear and make your expectations clear. So their recommendation was to maybe start small by asking if the influencer could share one of your posts. Even that alone will really increase your reach. But then you might build up a relationship and make a larger ask and have some different options. So actually, if an influencer doesn't have capacity to create content for you, could they help raise awareness by sharing a few posts that you provide? But also see it as a relationship. So make sure you invest time into that long term, the same way you would when working with volunteers. And be creative. Remember that, of course, these influencers have a reputation to uphold. That's kind of the foundation for their platforms. So make sure that your content is really high quality as well. It needs to be informative. It needs to be something that they'll want to share. If it doesn't align with their personal brand, then it's probably not something they're going to be able to share. So think about that quality. they're not going to compromise the trust they've built up with their own audiences to share content that isn't aligned with what they want to be sharing too. So think about that both ways. But really remember that they are experts on what their audience wants. So take time to listen to their advice. And particularly if you have the opportunity to chat to them and say, maybe, we're trying to engage this demographic in this particular campaign and here's why, then they might have some insights on how they would go about doing that too. And just before we go into our breakout room activity, I just wanted to briefly touch on a growing social media trend referred to as outbound engagement. So you're probably familiar with this. When you kind of look through your social media feeds, you can scroll through the comments section. There's like hundreds, thousands of comments, but also there's often now brands or organizations who join in that conversation. And that didn't used to happen so often. And this is something that's growing in popularity, and Hootsuite reported it as a trend to watch this year, where brands comment on other people's posts. So it's something to look at. The thing that's important to know is it's not just any post that people are commenting on. Brands are strategically engaging with creator content. So if you're thinking about working with influencers and ambassadors, then this is something to look at as well. So influencers and potentially ambassadors as well have loyal fans who pay attention to them, who read through the comments on their posts as much as they engage with the post itself. So there's a chance to be seen by that engaged audience by joining in that comment section. And that kind of sense of community really matters. We're told it matters especially to those younger groups like Gen Z, who struggle with loneliness, who look at these online spaces as a way to join in with community. But no matter your target audience, if you can use this comment section of posts to join in with relevant communities, relevant conversations, doing it, making sure it's authentic and it's thoughtful, there's a really interesting opportunity there to kind of build some longer lasting relationships. So Hootsuite mentioned that 41% of organizations are saying that they're testing out this proactive engagement on other people's posts. So there's a bit of uncertainty. It's very new, but they had some recommendations of things to think about before you join in on a creator's post. But proactive engagements are most effective when they're part of a larger strategy aimed at building relationships. So think about your commenting efforts and think about targeting the same creators you're wanting to engage with for your influencer marketing. So make sure they're relevant and that there's kind of a point to what you're doing. The more you interact with and appear in their online spaces when you're working with them, the more hopefully you can advance your relationship and build a natural kind of relationship online as well. That's something we used to do where I worked before, was with our kind of people we had as ambassadors or celebrities that we worked with on occasion. We'd be sure to, message happy birthday or comment on posts that were kind of a little bit relevant to what we did, to be able to congratulate them on any news and just be present and be part of that conversation. That being said, check the relevance of a post before commenting on it. See if it's relevant to your organization, your area of expertise, and also just see what the comment section is like. I'm sure we've all seen some comment sections are not very nice places to be a part of, but sometimes they're a really positive space of community, and that's where it can be really nice for you to join in as well. So just think about, can you join in on some of those comments? Can you add value to the discussion? And maybe it's a way to kind of warm up or work with an influencer as well. So maybe something to have a think about when it comes to looking at working with external people and joining in those conversation spaces. So hopefully we've shared some different bits and pieces that have sparked your imaginations and got you to start thinking about what this could look like for your organizations. And we're going to put you into some small groups to discuss the point on your screen now. If you can't join those groups, please do stay with us. We've got some more information to share afterwards, particularly around the end of the programme, which is sadly coming up soon. But you can, do this task solo as well. But you're going to be invited to join a breakout room. Share if you've worked with any influencers or ambassadors in the past, and then think about any upcoming opportunities to work with them. And I know in one of our recent sessions on the same topic, some people had some really great collaboration and came up with some exciting ideas for what that could look like for this year. So I'm going to open those up now, and you'll get that notification pop up on your screen. If you can't join a room, do stay with us and drop us a message in the chat to let us know your thoughts around this question. And otherwise, we'll see you back here in just over 10 or so minutes, so enough time to have a good discussion. Thanks, everybody. Hello, welcome back. I always feel really rude interrupting everyone's conversations and clicking return to the main room. So I hope you found those conversations helpful. Would be lovely to hear from a couple of people if you're feeling able to share kind of what sorts of things you talked about. Did you come up with any ideas? Did you share any experiences, or anything that you would feel happy sharing with the group at all? Maybe somebody.
In our group, we talked about kind of the cost, depending on your budget. This concept of leveraging ambassadors and influencers can be very expensive, where you're working with an agency to identify and target individuals that align, to very inexpensive, where you're working with maybe, so I talked about how we're partnering with a local radio show host to do a dueling bartenders event fundraiser, and that costs us nothing. So we just talked about how you can be creative, depending on budget, and it doesn't have to be expensive.
Yeah, that's such great advice. Thank you for sharing, Vinaya. And yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah, you've got that kind of agency route, which is a very expensive. It can be. I found actually, even when we did work with a really big agency, the amount of vetting I then had to do on top of that was quite time consuming. So yeah, I think really helpful to hear those different levels that we could go down. And I can see Ali has posted in the chat saying that you talked about kind of hesitancy to start a new ambassador program and think about the time taken to maintain those relationships. I think that's a really good point. I think my one thought on that would be maybe it's not even having like a lot of people or having like an extensive program. Often when I've spoken to people who are working on campaigns, it might be a case of engaging some people who are not influencers. So I guess they fall under ambassadors on maybe that short term of actually, you've supported us for years, like we really value your support. We know you already give to us. Could you support us by shouting about it on social media? And maybe scaling it down to be like a really simple, almost like not really a program, just an ambassador request almost. So that could be something to think about. But of course, it's about weighing up the benefits of whether that's actually going to help achieve your goals ultimately. It sounds like some really constructive conversations in those different breakout rooms. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I'm just going to launch a poll now for you, asking just for some thoughts as we're kind of coming towards the end of our session. But just while you're answering those questions that have come up on your screen, I'll hand over to Simran to talk us through our next steps.
Thank you. Yep, before I go through your next steps in terms of working with influencers, I wanted to invite you to a bonus webinar that's actually taking place next month. And it's a webinar open to all of our Bridge cohort and our alumni community, taking place on Thursday, the 6th of February, which is 11 a.m. ET. And it's being hosted by Lightfall's brilliant design team, who will be sharing principles to help you elevate your social media game. So if you want to learn how to create an eye-catching social media post, this hands-on masterclass will take you through 3 to 4 key design principles and also include some fun visual quizzes. So to attend this event, you actually have to register and secure your spot by clicking on the link that Sabina has just shared on the chat. In terms of next steps, you could start by taking your learning further with some Lightfall Academy courses on influencers, ambassadors, and engaging and how to engage them, which we'll also share in the chat now. Then you'll be ready to begin identifying opportunities where influencers or ambassadors could help you achieve your goals. And this is where you could download your ambassador toolkit to help with this, which will also be shared in the chat. And then you could also book a one-to-one coaching call to get advice from the team about your approach to engaging with influencers. After that, well, all of that, you'll be ready to engage with them for your upcoming campaigns. And before we wrap up for today, we wanted to remind you about our alumni community called the Bright Spark Society, which we mentioned last week. All our members have been All of our members have been the most engaged Bridge members of their cohort and are on their way to achieving amazing things in their field. Since you are now nearing the end of your Bridge journey, we want you all to be eligible to join this group, but to be invited, you need to complete a few set tasks. And the tasks you will need to take action on are attending your final live session, which is in 2 weeks' time. And then also create a campaign plan using the campaign planner tool, having a final one-to-one coaching call in 2025. Some of you already have had those, but do get those booked in if you haven't yet. And lastly, it's to complete your final Bridge progress tracker. And remember, you can also join our community of Bridge participants on Facebook and WhatsApp. Lots of you are already in the WhatsApp group, but if you haven't joined, so you could do so by clicking on the links that Sabina will share again in the chat.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Simran. Yeah, if you have any questions about the kind of Bright Spark Society criteria or anything like that, let us know. We also sent that information out over email yesterday, so you should have all of that for your records. I'll just launch a final poll to end the session, but does anyone have any questions before we finish up for today? We've just got a couple of minutes left and we'd be very happy to answer any questions you have about anything we discussed today or anything more broadly as well. Feel free to post them in the chat or come off of mute if you'd like to share at all. But no worries if not. Hopefully you found that session useful. And it looks like from that final poll, actually, lots of you are planning on working with high profile external figures. Some of you are less sure. Of course, that will depend on your overall strategy. But if there's anything we can do to help at all, do feel free to ask, reach out, or book in those final one-to-ones as well. But if there aren't any questions, I can't see any coming through. Then I think that's it for today. We will let you carry on with your mornings, but it was great to see you all. Thanks so much for taking the time to come along to this session. I hope you can fully make the most of your final month on the programme, and we look forward to seeing you all again very soon. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.